When I pulled into the rest stop, I saw my son asleep inside a rusted transit van. His little boy was huddled under a grease-stained blanket in the back seat. My name's Frank Dawson. I'm 69 years old, from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Spent 35 years hauling freight across this country, and I thought I'd seen everything the road had to offer. I was wrong. This was supposed to be my final run, a simple delivery to Little Rock, then home to hang up the keys for good. The rest stop outside Fort Smith had always been my halfway point. Good coffee, clean restrooms, a place to stretch the legs before the last push. But that morning, something caught my eye. A white Ford Transit, paint peeling, rear bumper held on with baling wire, parked at the far end of the lot where the pavement crumbles into gravel. I wouldn't have noticed it except for the Oklahoma plates. Then I saw him through the windshield. Kevin, my son, 43 years old, slumped behind the wheel with his jacket pulled up around his ears, and in the back, barely visible through the tinted glass, my 7-year-old grandson Tyler, curled up like he was trying to disappear. My chest went tight. I'd last seen Kevin a year ago at Thanksgiving. He'd looked tired then, but we all figured it was the business. The small trucking company he'd built from nothing. 3 trucks, local routes, enough to keep his family comfortable. Now here he was, sleeping in a van at a rest stop. I parked the rig and walked over, tapped on the window. Kevin's eyes opened slowly, confused at first, then wide with recognition. The look on his face wasn't relief, it was a shame. He rolled down the window. "Dad, what's going on, son?" He glanced back at Tyler, still sleeping. "We're fine. Just taking a trip. I've been around long enough to know when someone's lying. Not out of malice, out of pride." "Kevin, it's 40 degrees out here. That boy's wrapped in a moving blanket." He looked away, jaw working. "Finally, Brenda kicked us out. Her family took everything. The house, the business, the trucks. Said I'm not fit to manage my own life." The words came out flat, defeated, like he'd been saying them to himself for weeks, trying to make them make sense. A cold feeling settled in my gut, not anger yet, but a deep understanding that something wrong had happened. "How long have you been out here?" 3 months. 3 months. My son and grandson lived in a van while I was hauling soap across the Midwest. "Get your things," I said. "You're coming home with me." Before I go further, if you're watching this, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't yet. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'd like to know who's listening. Because what I found out next showed me that betrayal doesn't just reveal itself. It builds slow, like rust on a frame, until one day the whole structure collapses. And when I learned what Brenda's family had done, I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about taking everything a man had worked for and convincing the world he deserved to lose it. After all those miles on the highway, nothing prepares you for seeing your own blood sleeping in a van. Kevin didn't argue when I told him to follow me home. He was too tired, too beaten down. He just nodded, started that rattling engine, and fell in behind my rig for the 2-hour drive back to Tulsa. I spent those miles thinking. 35 years on the road teaches you things. You learn to read weather in the sky and which truck stops to avoid even when low on fuel. You learn that most people are decent if you give them half a chance, but some will smile while they're robbing you blind. You learn to trust your gut, and my gut was telling me that something about this situation didn't add up. Brenda had always been ambitious, sharp. When Kevin married her 10 years ago, I'd thought she was good for him. She pushed him to start the business, helped with the books, made connections. Kevin was the heart, loved driving, loved the work. Brenda was the brains, or so we thought. But kicking him out, taking the business, calling him unfit, that's not ambition, that's something else. We pulled into my driveway just after noon. The house was quiet. My wife Margaret had passed 2 years prior, and I hadn't changed much since. Still felt like she might walk in from the garden any minute, dirt on her hands, asking what I wanted for supper. Kevin parked in the driveway. Tyler climbed out, clutching a stuffed dog that had seen better days. The boy looked at me with big, uncertain eyes. "Hey there, Ty," I said. Remember Grandpa? He nodded. Are you hungry? Another nod. I made grilled cheese sandwiches. Nothing fancy, but hot food tastes like heaven when you've been eating cold cereal in a van. Tyler ate 3. Kevin barely touched him. She said I couldn't handle it after what happened. Kevin said finally. We were sitting at the kitchen table. Tyler was in the living room, watching cartoons I'd put on for him. After we lost the baby, she said I fell apart, that I wasn't thinking clearly. My hand tightened around my coffee mug. They'd lost a baby girl last winter, stillborn at 8 months. Margaret had still been alive then, and we'd both gone to the funeral. I'd watched my son carry that tiny white coffin and known he'd never be quite the same. Nobody would be. Grief doesn't make you unfit, I said. Her family disagreed. They had lawyers, doctor's notes about depression. They said I signed papers giving them control until I recovered. He looked at me. Dad, I don't even remember signing anything. That cold feeling in my gut spread. You said they took the business, the trucks I helped you buy, everything. Said it was for the best. I'd thank them later. I'd loaned Kevin $30,000 5 years ago to buy his first 2 trucks. We'd shaken hands on it. He'd paid me back in 3 years. Those were his trucks, his sweat, his roots. We're going to figure this out, I said. Kevin just stared at his sandwich, but I meant it, because sometimes the load you carry isn't cargo, it's family, and you don't leave family stranded on the side of the road. Sometimes the hardest hauls aren't on the interstate. They're right in your own backyard. That first night, after Tyler was asleep in the spare bedroom and Kevin had crashed on the couch, I sat in my office with a cup of coffee going cold. The office was really just Margaret's old sewing room. After she passed, I moved in a desk and filing cabinets. I couldn't bring myself to change much else. Her fabric scraps were still in a basket by the window. I pulled out the file I'd kept on Kevin's business. I'm not a man who throws things away. Every receipt, every contract, every handshake agreement I've ever made, I've got documentation. It's a habit from trucking. The company always wants proof. Proof you delivered on time. Proof the cargo wasn't damaged. Proof you didn't steal diesel. Proof matters. Kevin's file had the original loan agreement, $30,000, dated 5 years back. My signature, his signature. Simple terms. He'd paid it off early, but there were other papers too. Copies of his LLC formation, business licenses, the titles I'd helped him file when he bought the 2nd and 3rd trucks. I spread them across the desk. According to what Kevin told me, Brenda's father Dale had taken control of the business, said Kevin was unstable after the baby died, said he'd signed documents agreeing to temporary management. But Kevin was a careful man. Not book smart, maybe, but careful. He'd learned that from me. Would he really sign away his business? I picked up my phone and called an old friend, Luther Hayes. He'd driven for the same company I had back in the day. Retired now, living in Broken Arrow, but he'd become a notary and did legal document work on the side. Luther, it's Frank. I need your eyes on something. What kind of something? Business contracts. Maybe forged signatures. I don't know yet. He was quiet for a moment. This about Kevin? Small towns. Everyone knows everyone's business. Yeah, bring them by tomorrow. I'll look. I hung up and stared at the papers. Kevin had said he didn't remember signing anything, that the weeks after losing the baby were a blur. His wife Brenda comforted him. Her family helped out. Doctor visits, medication for depression, and somewhere in that fog, documents had been signed. Documents that stripped him of everything. I thought about the trucks, the business, the house Kevin and Brenda had bought 3 years ago. Modest place, but theirs. All gone. And Kevin was living in a van with his boy, too ashamed to ask for help until I stumbled across him by accident. That's not grief. That's calculated. I looked at Tyler's stuffed dog sitting on the couch where the boy had left it. One ear torn, stitching coming loose. Margaret would have fixed it, would have sat with needle and thread until it was right again. Some things you can't fix with a needle, but you can sure as hell try to make them right. I closed the file and decided that tomorrow we'd start digging. A hot meal and a warm bed can fix a lot, but not a broken trust. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Simple things. the kind of routine that helps a man find his footing again. I made breakfast every morning. Eggs, toast, bacon when I had it. Tyler would shuffle in wearing pajamas 2 sizes too small, and we'd eat together while Kevin sat quietly, staring at his coffee like it held answers. The boy was adjusting better than his father. Kids are resilient that way. Give them a safe place and they'll start to bloom. Tyler explored the house, found my old toolbox in the garage, asked questions about everything. What's this wrench for? Why do you have so many screwdrivers? Can I help fix something? He reminded me of Kevin at that age. I taught him how to change oil in the truck, how to check tire pressure, little things a grandfather should teach a grandson. Kevin watched sometimes. Other times he'd disappear into the spare room and close the door. I gave him space. Grief has its own schedule. But in the evenings, after Tyler went to bed, we'd sit on the porch. I'd tell stories from the road. The time I got stuck in a blizzard outside Denver and had to wait 36 hours for a plow. The time I delivered furniture to a movie set and met an actor whose name I've forgotten. The time a deer hit my truck, not the other way around, and I had to explain that to insurance. Stories that reminded him there's always another mile, always another load. Kevin would listen. Sometimes he'd even smile. One night, I brought it up carefully. Have you ever looked at the business papers? Before everything happened? He shrugged. Brenda handled most of that. I drove. She did the books. But you signed things. Yeah. Contracts, payroll, tax stuff. She'd put it in front of me. I'd sign. You read them first? He looked uncomfortable. Most of the time. Most of the time. That's what I was afraid of. Kevin, when your mama died, I could barely remember my own name for 3 months. That's normal. But I didn't sign any papers during that time because I knew I wasn't thinking straight. You think I did? I think someone took advantage when you were vulnerable. He was quiet for a long time. The porch light flickered. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. I trusted her, he said finally. I trusted all of them. I know. How do you come back from that? I didn't have an answer yet, but I was working on it. The next morning, I drove to Luther's place with Kevin's file, because trust is like a logbook. Every entry matters. Every signature tells a story. And I was starting to think the story Kevin had been told wasn't the real one. Sometimes you have to go back and check the miles, make sure someone didn't erase a few along the way. 35 years on the road taught me one thing. Always read the fine print before you sign anything. Luther's kitchen table was covered in papers. Kevin's business documents, bank statements he'd managed to save before Brenda changed the locks, contracts, titles, the loan agreement I'd signed with him 5 years back. Luther had his reading glasses on, going through each page slow and careful. He'd been a notary for 12 years now, seen every kind of signature, every kind of fraud. This one here, he said, tapping a document, transfer of business ownership, dated March 15th. That's 2 weeks after the funeral in late February, the baby's funeral, when Kevin could barely stand upright. I leaned in. The signature looked like Kevin's, same slant, same loop on the K, but the pen pressure was different, lighter, shakier. He was on medication, I said. The doctor prescribed something for the grief. That'd explain it. Luther flipped to another page. And this one, quitclaim deed, transferring his share of the house to Brenda outright, dated April 2nd. Does he remember signing that? Says he signed a stack of insurance papers. Brenda told him it was for the baby's hospital bills. Luther shook his head. These aren't insurance forms. This is a complete transfer of assets. We went through 14 documents total. Every one of them signed during a 6-week window after Kevin lost his daughter. Every one of them was stripping away something he owned. The business, the house, the trucks, even his personal savings account, transferred to a joint account with Dale's name on it, Brenda's father. By the time we finished, Luther had his reading glasses off, rubbing his eyes. Frank, this is fraud. Textbook exploitation of a vulnerable person. Can we prove it? Maybe. You've got a timeline. You've got his medical records showing he was on antidepressants. You've got the fact that he's a co-owner of that original LLC formation, and nobody can just sign that away without proper legal process. He pulled out the loan agreement I'd brought, the one I'd signed with Kevin. This here's interesting. You're listed as a secured creditor. You loaned him $30,000 for those first 2 trucks. That gives you standing. Standing for what? To contest the business transfer. You've got a financial stake. If they fraudulently transferred ownership, they essentially stole from you too. That was something I hadn't considered. I'd written off that loan years ago when Kevin paid me back. But Luther was right. I still had legal interest. The trucks I'd helped buy were part of that business. There's something else, Luther said. He pulled out a bank statement. Kevin's business account from last March. Look at these withdrawals. $50,000 transferred out over 3 weeks. All of it going to an account in Dale's name, Brenda's father. Kevin authorized that? According to the transfer records, yes. But look at the dates. I looked. Every transfer happened on a Tuesday or Thursday, regular as clockwork. Kevin drove Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I said slowly. Long hauls to Dallas and back. He was on the road those days. Exactly. Someone with access to the account was moving money while he was gone. Brenda. Had to be. I thought about her sitting in Kevin's office, him out on a delivery, her transferring $50,000 like it was nothing. Money he'd earned. Money that was supposed to go to Tyler's future. Luther stacked the papers neatly. You want my advice? Get a lawyer. A good one. This is going to be a fight. I nodded. I already had someone in mind. Tom Breslin, old friend from my driving days. He'd gotten his law degree late in life, opened a practice in Tulsa specializing in contract disputes. If anyone could untangle this mess, it was Tom. I gathered the papers, thanked Luther, and drove home. Kevin was in the driveway, teaching Tyler how to check the oil in my truck. The boy had his head under the hood, asking questions. Kevin was smiling. First real smile I'd seen since the rest stop. I watched them for a minute before I got out. Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger. It's patience. It's building your case piece by piece until the truth has nowhere to hide. Brenda and her family thought they'd won, though Kevin was too broken to fight back. Thought nobody would question their story. They didn't count on a stubborn old trucker with a filing cabinet full of evidence. They waited until I was 2,000 miles away to throw my son out of his own house. That evening, after Tyler went to bed, Kevin and I sat in the living room. I'd put the papers on the coffee table. He'd been avoiding them all day. I need to know everything, I said. Start to finish. He stared at the documents. Didn't touch them. You remember Uncle Mike? He said finally. My younger brother. Died in a motorcycle accident 3 years back. Kevin and Mike had been close. Of course. After we lost the baby, I kept thinking about him, about how fast everything can end. I wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating. Doc put me on pills, but they just made everything foggy. He rubbed his face. Dale, Brenda's father, offered to help. Said he'd managed insurance claims for 30 years, knew all about business paperwork. Said I should focus on healing, let him handle the details. And you trusted him. He was Brenda's father, my father-in-law. Why wouldn't I? Fair point. I'd trusted him too. Back when Kevin first got married, Dale had seemed like a solid man. Steady, reliable. Turned out steady just meant patience. Patient enough to wait for the right moment. He'd bring papers to the house, Kevin continued. Stacks of them. Insurance forms, he said. Hospital bills. Coverage documents. I'd sign whatever he put in front of me. Brenda would be there, telling me it was okay. It was just paperwork. The quit-claim deed. The business transfer. You didn't know what you were signing. I couldn't focus on anything. The words just swam. Dale would point to the signature line, and I'd sign. Over and over. That cold anger in my gut was spreading. When did you figure it out? June, 4 months after the funeral. The fog started lifting. I asked Brenda about the business accounts because I needed to make payroll. She said Dale was handling it. I said I wanted access back. She got cold, said I wasn't ready, that I was still unstable. He picked up one of the documents. His hand shook slightly. I went to the bank. They said I wasn't on the account anymore, wasn't on the business registration. My name had been removed from everything. I confronted Dale. He had all these papers I'd signed, said I'd agreed to temporary management until I was mentally competent again. That's when Brenda turned on you. She said I was being paranoid. that the grief was making me irrational. She brought in their family doctor, not my doctor, theirs, who wrote something up about me being emotionally unstable, said I might be a danger to Tyler. The words hung there, a danger to his own son. The boy is sleeping upstairs with a stuffed dog and a grandfather who'd never let anyone hurt him. They had it planned, Kevin said quietly. The whole thing. Wait until I was vulnerable. Get me to sign everything over. Then paint me as crazy when I questioned it. When did they kick you out? August 15th. You were on that Seattle run. 3-week haul. Dale served me with papers saying I had 72 hours to vacate the property. Said I could take personal belongings only. Everything else belonged to Brenda. Where was she during this? At her parents' house. Wouldn't take my calls. 3 years of marriage. 10 years together total. And she'd let her father steal everything while Kevin was drowning in grief. I thought about the rest stop. Kevin is sleeping in a van. Tyler wrapped in a moving blanket. 72 hours to pack a life into a vehicle and disappear. You should have called me, I said. You'd already done so much, Dad. The loan, helping with the down payment on the house. I didn't want to. You're my son. He looked at me, eyes red. They did this when I was gone on purpose, I said. Waited until you had nobody close by. Nobody questions the story. Kevin nodded, but they'd made a mistake. They'd assumed Kevin would stay quiet, stay ashamed. They didn't know I kept receipts, didn't know I had friends in useful places, didn't know that some men, when you push their family hard enough, push back twice as hard. They didn't just steal money. They stole 15 years of my son's sweat and dignity. The next morning, I sat down with a calculator and Kevin's salvaged records. Numbers don't lie. Unlike people or emotions, they sit cold and honest, revealing what happened. Kevin's trucking company, 3 trucks, 2 Freightliners, and a Peterbilt. He'd bought the first 2 with my loan 5 years back, paid cash for the third 2 years later. Current market value for all 3, approximately $80,000. The business itself, contracts with local manufacturers, regular routes, solid reputation, was worth another $100,000 easy. I'd seen the quarterly statements before everything fell apart. Kevin was clearing $60,000 a year profit after expenses. Not rich, but comfortable. Honest work. Gone. The house. Kevin and Brenda bought it 3 years ago for $215,000. I'd helped with $40,000 for the down payment. Another handshake loan, paid back over time. Current value, $235,000. Mortgage balance, $120,000. That's over $100,000 in equity. Also gone. Then there were the business accounts. Kevin had kept decent records, even during the grief. I could see the balance in March, $78,000. Operating capital, money for fuel, maintenance, payroll for the 1 part-time driver he employed. By July, it was down to $12,000. $66,000 transferred out in 4 months. Paying debts, Dale had told Kevin. Business expenses. I went through every transaction, matched them against Kevin's delivery logs, fuel receipts, maintenance records. There were no debts. The business ran lean and profitable. Someone had drained the account systematically, week by week, while Kevin was too foggy to notice. I added it up. Total value stolen. Approximately $300,000 in assets and equity. 15 years of Kevin's life, starting with nothing after high school, learning the business from the ground up, buying his first truck, building a client base, earning trust. All of it transferred to Brenda and Dale's names, while my son was too broken to understand what he was signing. My hands were shaking when I finished. Not from age, from fury. But I'd learned long ago that anger without direction is just noise. You need a plan. You need allies. I picked up the phone and called Tom Breslin. Tom, it's Frank Dawson. Frank, haven't heard from you in what, 2 years? How's retirement treating you? I need a lawyer. For my son. It's a fraud. Asset theft. Elder abuse, except not elder. Vulnerable person abuse. His tone changed. Professional. Sharp. Tell me. I laid it out. Everything. The documents. The timeline. The stolen business. Tom listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. This is prosecutable, he said, but it's going to be a fight. They'll have lawyers. They'll argue Kevin signed willingly. We'll need to prove he wasn't mentally competent at the time. We've got medical records, timeline, documentation showing they waited until he was vulnerable. That's good. That's a start. Bring everything to my office tomorrow. All of it. I said I would. After I hung up, I sat there looking at the numbers. $300,000. But this wasn't about money anymore. It was about a man taking back his name. In trucking, you learn that the best revenge is a well-planned route and the patience to see it through. Tom's office was in a strip mall off Highway 51. Small operation, just him and a paralegal. But I'd known Tom for 25 years. He'd helped me fight the company once over unpaid overtime. Won too. He spent 3 hours going through every document. This is solid, he said finally. The timeline alone is damning, but we need more. We need someone else who can testify to Kevin's state of mind. Someone who saw what was happening. I thought about that. He had a driver who helped manage routes. I said, guy named Ray Morrison. They weren't partners officially, but Ray drove for Kevin, helped manage the routes. Last I heard, he'd left about 6 months ago. Find him. I found Ray working at a warehouse in Broken Arrow. He was 53, built like he'd spent his life lifting heavy things. We met at a diner. He knew why I was there before I said anything. I wondered when someone would start asking questions. He said, what happened? Ray stirred his coffee. Kevin fell apart after the baby died. We all understood. I picked up extra routes, kept things running. Dale started showing up, saying he was helping with the books. And 2 months in, Dale calls me into Kevin's office, says the business is restructuring, says my position is being eliminated. I asked Kevin about it. He looked confused, said Dale was handling everything, that I should talk to Dale. Dale pushed you out, had a lawyer send me a letter, said if I didn't resign, they'd sue me for breach of contract. Contract I'd never signed. Ray shook his head. I couldn't afford a legal fight, so I walked. You willing to testify to that? Damn right I am. Kevin's a good man. What they did to him was wrong. I got Ray's contact information and passed it to Tom. 2 days later, Tom called with more news. I did some digging. Dale's done this before. What do you mean? 10 years ago, he was investigated for insurance fraud. Nothing stuck. But the complaint was from an elderly client who claimed Dale manipulated her into signing over her house. Case was settled quietly out of court. Pattern of behavior. That's what prosecutors call it. That evening, I took Tyler out to the garage, showed him how to organize tools, taught him that you label everything, keep everything in its place. Why, Grandpa? Because when you need something, you don't want to waste time hunting for it. You want to know exactly where it is. He nodded, serious, arranging wrenches by size. Patient work, methodical, the kind of thing that builds character. Inside, Kevin was on the couch, reading through legal documents Tom had sent over, building his own understanding of what had been done to him. The next morning, I drove past Kevin's old house. Brenda's car was in the driveway, lights on inside. She had no idea what was coming, but she would, soon enough. Sometimes justice takes time, but it's worth the wait. The house my son built with his own hands had strangers living in it, and security cameras watching for ghosts. I drove Kevin past it on a Thursday morning. Tyler was at the house with a neighbor's kid I'd arranged to babysit. Kevin needed to see this after months of legal prep, needed to remember what he was fighting for. The house sat on a corner lot in a quiet neighborhood off 41st Street. Modest 3-bedroom ranch. Nothing fancy, but Kevin had put his mark on every inch of it. He'd replaced the roof himself 2 summers ago, painted the trim, built a small workshop in the garage where he'd taught Tyler to use a hammer, landscaped the front yard with native plants that didn't need much water. Practical, like everything Kevin did. Now, Brenda's sedan sat in the driveway, Dale's F-250 beside it, and the yard was already going to hell. The native plants were overgrown, choked with weeds. One of the gutters hung loose. The workshop door stood open, and I could see boxes stacked inside. Dale's junk, probably. They've got cameras, Kevin said quietly. He was right. New security cameras mounted at each corner of the house. Black domes. Professional installation. Guilty people put up cameras, I said. Kevin stared at the workshop. That's where I taught Ty how to use a level. He was so proud when we hung that shelf straight. His voice was steady, but his hands were clenched in his lap. You remember the day we closed on this place? I asked. Yeah. You drove up with Margaret. She brought a casserole and a bottle of wine. Said every house needs a proper christening. You were so excited you couldn't stop grinning. Showed us every room like it was a mansion. It felt like one. First house I ever owned. I pulled away from the curb slowly. Didn't want to look like we were chasing the place, even though that's exactly what we were doing. You noticed the mailbox? Kevin asked. I had. New name on it. Just Morrison. Brenda's maiden name. Like Kevin had never existed. We drove in silence for a few blocks. When do we make our move? Kevin asked. Soon. Tom's filing the paperwork next week. But first, I want to have a conversation with your father-in-law. Dad, not a confrontation, just a conversation. Man to man. Kevin looked at me. What are you planning? I'm planning to give him a chance to make this right, before the lawyers get involved and things get expensive. It was a lie, of course. The lawyers were already involved. But Dale didn't know that yet, and I wanted to see his face when he realized he hadn't gotten away with anything. When we take this back, I said, pulling onto the highway, it'll be permanent, legal, clean. We're not going to do anything that gives them ammunition. We're going to do this right. Kevin nodded, but I could see him looking in the side mirror, watching his house disappear behind us. Some men build with their hands. Some men steal with paperwork. I was about to teach Dale Morrison the difference. That evening, I called him from a burner phone Tom had given me. Told him I wanted to discuss Kevin's remaining obligations. Kept my voice tired, defeated, like an old man who just wanted to settle his son's debts and be done with it. Dale agreed to meet me at a diner on Saturday morning. He had no idea I'd spent 3 weeks building a case that would bury him. The look on his face when he realized I'd kept every receipt from 15 years ago was worth the price of admission. The diner was a truck stop off I-44, neutral ground, busy enough that nobody would notice 2 old men having coffee. Dale walked in 5 minutes late, 67 years old, trim build, slicked back gray hair. He wore a polo shirt and khakis like he was heading to a country club. He spotted me in the corner booth and walked over with the confidence of a man who thought he'd already won. Frank. He didn't offer his hand, just slid into the seat across from me. Dale, thanks for meeting. You said this was about Kevin's debts. That's right. A waitress came by. Dale ordered coffee, black. I already had mine. Kevin's in a difficult situation, I started. Keep my voice even, reasonable. Living in a van with his boy. I'm trying to help him get back on his feet, but he's got obligations. Kevin made his choices. Dale interrupted. The business was failing because he couldn't focus. The house. Brenda had to protect her investment. We did what we had to do. During his grief, during his breakdown, there's a difference. Dale leaned back. Look, Frank, I understand you're trying to help your son, but Kevin wasn't capable of managing his own affairs. We've got documentation, doctor's evaluations, his own signature on everything, medical records showing he was on anti-anxiety medication, which proves my point. He was unstable or vulnerable. Dale's eyes narrowed. What are you getting at? Just trying to understand the timeline. Kevin loses his baby in February. By March, the business is transferred to your name. By April, the house is in Brenda's name only. By June, the bank accounts will be drained. That's fast work. We acted quickly to protect assets from Kevin's poor decision-making. Such as? Dale waved his hand. He was making bad deals, falling behind on maintenance. We had to step in before the whole operation collapsed. I'd seen Kevin's maintenance records. Every truck serviced on schedule. Every inspection passed. Dale was lying and he wasn't even good at it. Here's the thing, I said. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. I'm a co-signer on the original business loan, secured creditor, which means I have legal standing to contest any fraudulent transfers. Dale opened the folder. His face went pale. Inside were copies of everything. The loan agreement, the LLC formation papers with my name on them, the truck titles showing my lien. Bank records showing suspicious transfers. These trucks Kevin bought. I continued, my voice still calm. I helped pay for them. They're collateral on a loan you just transferred without my consent. That's theft, Dale. From me. His jaw worked. Everything was legal. Was it? Because my lawyer disagrees. And so does the prosecutor's office. Once they see these medical records showing Kevin was signing documents while heavily medicated for grief. Dale's hand shook slightly as he closed the folder. You want to fight this? I asked. We can, but it'll cost you everything. Legal fees, reputation, probably jail time for fraud. I stood up, dropped a $5 bill on the table for my coffee. I'll see you in court, Dale. Enjoy your coffee. I walked out without looking back. Through the diner window, I could see him sitting there, staring at the folder like it was a rattlesnake. Sometimes the best punch is the one you see coming but can't stop. My daughter-in-law offered my son $10,000 for the life he built, like you'd tip a waiter for decent service. 3 days after my meeting with Dale, Brenda called Kevin's phone. I watched him stare at the screen. We were in the kitchen. Tyler was outside, throwing a baseball against the side of the garage. You should answer, I said. Why? Because we need to know what they're planning, Kevin answered. Put it on speaker. Kevin. Brenda's voice was careful, measured. We need to talk. About what? About all this. About us. Can we meet? Just you and me, without lawyers. Kevin looked at me. I shook my head slightly, but he was already answering. Where? The Starbucks on 71st, tomorrow at 2. She hung up. You're not going alone, I said. She said, no lawyers. I'm not a lawyer. I'm your father. The next day, Kevin walked into that Starbucks at 2 o'clock. I followed 5 minutes later, took a table in the back corner with a newspaper. Brenda was already there, and so was Dale. Kevin stopped when he saw them both. You said just us. Dad's here for support. Just like you probably have someone watching from the parking lot. She glanced toward the window. Smart woman. She'd spotted my truck. They sat. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard enough. Brenda started soft, sympathetic. Kevin, I know you're angry, but everything I did for Tyler. You were falling apart. You couldn't take care of yourself, let alone him. I was grieving. You were neglecting him, forgetting to pick him up from school, not feeding him properly. I was scared. That was a lie. I'd seen Kevin during that time. He'd been broken, yes, but never neglectful. Tyler had always been fed, clean, cared for. So you stole everything? I protected our assets. Her voice got harder. The business was failing. The house payment was late. Someone had to step up. The business wasn't failing. The accounts show what I let you see. She leaned forward. Kevin, this doesn't have to be ugly. We can settle this quietly. I'll give you $10,000. Fresh start money. You drop the legal action and we all move on. $10,000. For a business worth $180. For a house with $100,000 in equity. For 15 years of his life. Kevin stared at her. You're serious. It's generous. More than you'd get in court. It's insulting. It's practical. She opened her purse, pulled out a check. Already written. Take it, Kevin. Start over somewhere else. It's what's best for everyone. Not for Tyler. Tyler is fine. He's better off with stability. With a mother who isn't that? A failure. She said it flatly. Cold. The mask dropped. You're a failure, Kevin. You always have been. The only reason the business worked was because I ran it. The only reason we had a house was because I managed the money. And now you want it all back? For what? So you can drive it into the ground again? Kevin stood up. His chair scraped loud against the tile. That's when I walked over. This meeting's done, I said. Brenda looked at me, then at Kevin. You had your chance. Don't say I didn't try. She walked out. Dale followed. Kevin stood there, hands shaking. You okay? I asked. She called me a failure. She's scared. Scared people say stupid things. But we both knew the truth. She wasn't scared yet. She would be. The law moves slow, but it moves sure. And when you've got truth on your side, time is your friend. Tom filed the lawsuit on a Monday morning. 18 pages. Meticulously documented. Count 1, fraud and misrepresentation. Dale and Brenda had deliberately misled Kevin about the nature of documents he was signing while he was in a vulnerable mental state. Count 2. Undue influence. They had exploited their position of trust during his grief to gain control of assets. Count 3. Breach of fiduciary duty. As family members claiming to help, they had a duty to act in Kevin's best interest. Instead, they'd stolen from him. Count 4. Conversion. They'd taken property that wasn't legally theirs, specifically the trucks I'd helped finance, which were still subject to my original lien. That last one was the kicker, because it wasn't just Kevin suing. It was me too. Separate claim, different standing. Dale's lawyers could argue Kevin had signed everything willingly, but they couldn't argue around my secured creditor status. Tom also filed criminal complaints with the district attorney. Wire fraud, financial exploitation of a vulnerable person. It was a long shot for criminal charges, but worth trying. The evidence was overwhelming. Medical records showing Kevin had been prescribed Xanax and attending grief counseling when the documents were signed. His doctor testified in a deposition that Kevin had been significantly impaired in his decision-making capacity during that period. Bank records showing systematic transfers of funds, always when Kevin was out on deliveries, always in amounts just under reporting thresholds. Ray Morrison's testimony about being forced out of his job, my original loan documents, proving my financial stake, and the timeline. That damning timeline showing everything had happened during a 6-week window when Kevin could barely function. Dale's response was predictable. His lawyer filed a motion to dismiss, arguing Kevin had signed everything of his own free will, claimed the grief counseling was routine and didn't impair judgment, said the transfers were proper business management. But Tom was ready. He'd seen this playbook before. We filed for a temporary injunction, asked the court to freeze all assets while the case proceeded. The house, the business, the trucks, everything. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. In the meantime, Tom dug deeper, found that Dale had done something similar 10 years ago, convinced an elderly widow to sign over her house while she was grieving her husband. That case had settled quietly, but the court documents were public record. Pattern of behavior. That's what the judge would see. The injunction hearing was quick, 20 minutes. Tom presented the medical records, the timeline, and my secured creditor claim. Dale's lawyer argued about valid signatures and proper procedures. The judge looked at the documents. I looked at Dale. I looked at Kevin sitting beside me in his only clean shirt. Injunction granted. All assets frozen pending trial. Just like that, Dale's face went red. Brenda grabbed his arm. Outside the courthouse, Kevin stood on the steps, blinking in the sunlight. "What does this mean?" he asked. "It means they can't sell anything, can't transfer anything, can't touch anything until the judge decides who it really belongs to." It wasn't a victory yet, but it was a start. And for the first time in months, Kevin smiled. When a house of cards starts falling, the people who built it always turn on each other first. Dale's lawyer quit 3 weeks after the injunction hearing. Tom called me with the news. Richard Morrison just withdrew from the case, filed a motion to be relieved as counsel. What's that mean? Means he doesn't want his name attached to this anymore. Lawyers only bail when the case is unwinnable or the client's lying to them. I could picture Dale in his office, scrambling to find someone else willing to defend the indefensible. But the cracks were showing everywhere now. Kevin's phone started ringing. Old clients from the trucking business, people he'd hauled for regularly before Dale took over. First was Jim Patterson, who owned a furniture warehouse in Broken Arrow. He'd used Kevin's services twice a week for 3 years. "Kevin, I wanted you to know, that guy who took over your routes, Dale, he's terrible. Late deliveries, damaged goods. I tried to work with him because he said you'd had a breakdown, but I finally had to cancel the contract. He told you I had a breakdown, said you were in a facility getting treatment, that he was running things until you recovered. I'm sorry, man. I didn't know." Kevin thanked him and hung up, looked at me across the kitchen table. "He's been telling people I'm institutionalized. We'll add it to the list." 2 more clients called that week. Same story. Dale had tried to take over their contracts, provided poor service, and blamed Kevin's mental instability for any problems. Every one of them offered to testify, to write letters, to do whatever Kevin needed, because people remember when you do good work, when you show up on time, treat their property with respect, shake hands, and mean it. Dale had assumed Kevin's reputation would die with his business. He'd been wrong. Ray Morrison called too, Kevin's old driver. "I've been thinking about what you asked," Ray said. "About testifying. I'll do it. I'll tell them exactly what Dale did, how he threatened me, how Kevin was in no shape to make business decisions." Tom added Ray to the witness list. Meanwhile, interesting news was filtering back through neighborhood gossip. I'd kept in touch with a couple who lived 3 houses down from Kevin's old place. Good people, quiet. They'd always liked Kevin. The wife called me one evening. "Frank, I don't know if this matters, but Dale and Brenda have been fighting. Loud. We can hear it from our yard. Last night Dale was yelling something about lawyers and money." "When did this start?" "Right after that court hearing. The one where the judge froze everything. Pressure. It was working. At home, things were settling into routine. Tyler had started school at the local elementary, made a friend, came home talking about recess and math problems. Kevin was putting on weight again, sleeping better. Some mornings I'd find him in the garage, going through his old tools, getting reacquainted with the life he'd almost lost. One evening, I took Tyler out to check the oil in my truck, our regular ritual now. "Grandpa, what happens to people who do bad things?" "Depends on the bad thing." "Why?" "Mom and Grandpa Dale did bad things to Dad. Will they go to jail?" I thought about how to answer that, how to teach consequences without teaching hate. Maybe, or maybe they'll have to give back what they took, and everyone will know what they did. Sometimes that's punishment enough. Does Dad still love Mom? Harder question. I think he's sad about what she became. That's different from love. Tyler nodded like that made sense. We finished the oil check. As we walked back inside, I saw Kevin watching from the window. He looked stronger, steadier, like a man remembering who he used to be. Dale's house of cards was falling, and all we had to do was stand back and let gravity work. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that his mother chose greed over his future? Tyler asked me on a Saturday morning. We were sitting on the porch, sorting through fishing tackle. Kevin was inside, on the phone with Tom. "Why doesn't Mom want to see me?" I set down the tackle box, looked at this boy with his father's eyes and his grandmother's stubborn chin. "What makes you think she doesn't want to see you? She hasn't called, not even once." He picked at a knot in the fishing line. "Before we left, Grandpa Dale said Dad was a bad man, that we were leaving because Dad couldn't take care of us. But Dad takes good care of me here." My chest tightened. "Your mom's confused right now. Sometimes adults make mistakes, big ones, and instead of admitting they were wrong, they dig in deeper." "What kind of mistakes?" "She listened to people who gave her bad advice, about your dad, about what was fair, and now she's stuck defending those choices even though they hurt people she should love." Tyler was quiet for a moment. "Grandpa Dale's a bad man, isn't he? He's a man who did bad things. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Good question. Hard question. Bad things can sometimes be fixed. A bad man doesn't want to fix them. Grandpa Dale had lots of chances to make this right, to give your dad back what he took. He chose not to. That's what makes it worse." Tyler nodded slowly, processing. "When I lived at the house, before we left, I heard Mom and Grandpa Dale talking. They said Dad was going to lose everything because he was weak. They said I was better off without him. The anger that went through me was cold, controlled, the kind that doesn't show on your face. Your dad isn't weak. Your dad was sad. There's a big difference. He lost your baby sister. That kind of sadness, it takes time to heal. Taking advantage of someone while they're healing, that's wrong. I miss her sometimes. My sister, even though I never met her. That's good. That means you've got a big heart." We sat there in the morning sun. A car drove past. Someone's dog barked down the street. "Grandpa Frank?" "Yeah, buddy? When this is all over, will Mom come back?" I didn't know how to answer that. Didn't want to give him false hope. Didn't want to poison him against his own mother either. "I don't know, but I know your dad loves you. I know you've got a home here as long as you need it. And I know that whatever happens, You're going to be okay. Because you'll make sure. Because you're tough, like your dad, like your grandma was. You come from good people, Tyler. Don't forget that. He leaned against my shoulder. 8 years old and already carrying weight no kid should carry. Inside, I could hear Kevin laughing at something Tom said on the phone. A real laugh. The kind I hadn't heard in months. We were healing. All three of us. Some wounds take time, but they do heal. You just need the right people around you when they do. Later that afternoon, Tyler drew a picture. A house with 3 people in front of it. Him, Kevin, and me. No Brenda, no Dale. Just the 3 of us. He taped it to the refrigerator without comment. Kevin saw it. Didn't say anything. But I watched his jaw tighten. He knew what we were fighting for now. Not just assets. Not just justice. Family. The real kind. Turns out my son wasn't Dale's first victim. Just his most profitable one. Tom called on a Wednesday afternoon. I was in the garage with Tyler, teaching him how to gap spark plugs. Frank, you need to hear this. I stepped outside. What did you find? Dale's been filing the business assets as depreciated and worthless on tax returns. Claims the trucks are barely operational, not worth more than scrap value. But they're running roads. Making money? Exactly. And here's the kicker. He's got them insured at full replacement value, $120,000 coverage. That's insurance fraud. You can't tell the IRS something's worthless and tell the insurance company it's worth 6 figures. I leaned against the garage door. What else? He filed a police report last September. Kevin showed up at the house making threats. Violent threats. Used it to get a temporary restraining order that kept Kevin away from his own property. Kevin was living in a van. He never threatened anyone. I know. I pulled the police report. It's thin. No witnesses. No evidence. Just Dale's word. But it gave him legal cover to change the locks and claim Kevin was dangerous. The anger in my gut was spreading. There's more, Tom said. I did some digging into Dale's background. He was married before, back in the 90s. I had a daughter from that marriage. And the daughter married young. Her husband started a small construction business. Did pretty well. Then Dale's first wife got sick. Cancer. Died about 6 months later. During that time, Dale helped the son-in-law manage things. By the time the dust settled, the construction business was in Dale's name. The son-in-law got squeezed out. Same pattern. Exactly. The son-in-law tried to fight it, but he couldn't afford lawyers. Ended up settling for pennies on the dollar. Dale's been doing this for 30 years, Frank. Your son's just the most recent victim. I thought about that. About Dale sitting in diners and living rooms, waiting for tragedy, waiting for grief, waiting for the moment when someone's guard was down, then moving in like a vulture. Can we use the previous case? Pattern evidence. Shows this wasn't a one-time mistake. Shows deliberate, calculated predatory behavior. The judge will eat it up. What about criminal charges? Insurance fraud's prosecutable. The false police report could be filing a false instrument. Tax fraud's federal, but I've got a friend in the DA's office who might be interested. This isn't just civil anymore, Frank. Dale could be looking at prison time. I hung up and stood there for a moment. Tyler poked his head out of the garage. Everything okay, Grandpa? Everything's fine, buddy. Come on, let's finish those spark plugs. But everything wasn't fine. Not for Dale. Because he'd built his entire life on taking advantage of people at their lowest moment. And now every single theft was coming to light. Inside, Kevin was making dinner. Spaghetti, Tyler's favorite. Normal life, routine, the things Dale had tried to steal. I didn't tell Kevin about the previous victim yet. Didn't want to stir up old anger when things were going well. But I knew this much. Dale Morrison had finally picked the wrong family. Because this time, the son had a father who kept receipts. Sometimes the hardest decision isn't between right and wrong. It's between good enough and completely right. Dale's new lawyer called Tom 2 months later, asked for a meeting to discuss settlement options. We met at Tom's office on a Thursday afternoon. Dale wasn't there, just his lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. My client wishes to avoid trial, she started. He's prepared to return the house and business assets to Kevin. full transfer, clean titles. In exchange, Kevin drops all civil and criminal complaints. Tom looked at me, at Kevin. What about the drained business accounts? Tom asked. He'll return $50,000. Cash. That's what's left after business expenses. Business expenses for a company he stole. My client believes he acted in good faith. Your client's a serial predator who's done this before. We have documentation. Patricia's jaw tightened. The offer stands. Take it or leave it. Trial's a risk for everyone. After she left, the three of us sat in Tom's office. It's a good offer, Tom said. You get the house back, the business, $50,000. That's most of what you lost, Kevin. But no consequences for Dale, Kevin said. Civil recovery, no criminal record. He walks away bruised but not broken. I stayed quiet. This was Kevin's choice. Kevin looked at me. What do you think, Dad? I think you'd get your life back today instead of 6 months from now. That matters. But Dale would do this to someone else. Next time there's a grieving son-in-law or a widow or someone vulnerable, he'd wait and watch and strike again. Kevin nodded slowly. Tom, what happens if we go to trial? We probably win. The evidence is overwhelming. But trials are unpredictable. Juries can be swayed, and it'll cost time, money, and stress. What about the criminal charges? Those proceed separately. But if you settle the civil case, the DA might lose interest. Hard to prosecute when the victim's been made whole. Kevin stood up. I walked to the window. I looked out at the parking lot. I want to go to trial. Kevin, he needs to face consequences. Not just for me, for the last guy, for whoever would have been next. He turned around. I'll risk losing everything again if it means he can't do this to another family. Tom looked at me. I nodded. All right, Tom said. We go to trial. Outside, Kevin breathed deep. You sure about this? I asked. No, but it's right. Sometimes being sure isn't the point. Sometimes you just do what's right and hope it's enough. 35 years of keeping logbooks taught me that truth doesn't need decoration. It just needs documentation. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, about 30 seats for observers, most of them empty. Judge Patricia Hendricks presided. 64 years old, gray hair pulled back tight, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She'd been on the bench for 22 years. Tom said she had a reputation for cutting through nonsense. We needed that. Tom opened with the paper trail. Every document projected on a screen. The loan agreement showing my co-signer status, the LLC formation papers, the truck titles with my lien, then the transfers, one by one, each signed during that 6-week window after Kevin lost his baby. Note the dates, Tom said. March 15th, March 22nd, April 2nd, April 9th. Every single transfer occurred while Mr. Dawson was under medical care for severe depression and grief, while he was on prescribed anti-anxiety medication. Dale's lawyer objected. My client had no way of knowing. Mr. Morrison is listed as emergency contact on 3 of these medical documents. Tom interrupted. He knew exactly what state Kevin Dawson was in. Judge Hendricks looked over her glasses. Objection overruled. Continue, Mr. Breslin. I testified first. Kept it simple. Facts. Dates. The original loan. My secured interest. How Kevin had always paid his debts, maintained his equipment, honored his commitments. Mr. Dawson, the judge asked, in your opinion, was your son capable of making sound business decisions during March and April of last year? No, Your Honor. He could barely get out of bed. I had to remind him to eat. Yet, he signed multiple complex legal documents during that period. He signed what people put in front of him, because he trusted them. She nodded, made a note. Ray Morrison testified next, described how Dale had pushed him out, threatened him with lawsuits, destroyed working relationships Kevin had built over years. Then came the clients, Jim Patterson from the furniture warehouse, 2 other business owners Kevin had worked with. Every one of them said the same thing. Kevin was reliable, professional, and honest. Dale was none of those things. The medical expert was devastating. Dr. Sarah Chen, psychiatrist, reviewed Kevin's records and the document timeline. In my professional opinion, Mr. Kevin Dawson was not capable of informed consent during this period. The combination of acute grief, major depressive disorder, and prescribed benzodiazepines would have significantly impaired his judgment and decision-making capacity. Could he have understood what he was signing? It's unlikely he could have understood the full implications. No. Dale's lawyer tried to argue that Kevin's signatures proved intent, that grief doesn't equal incompetence. But then, Brenda testified, she looked smaller than I remembered, thinner. She wouldn't meet Kevin's eyes. Mrs. Dawson, when did your father first suggest taking control of the business? February, right after we lost the baby, before your husband had even recovered. He said Kevin couldn't handle it, that we needed to protect our assets. Did you believe your husband was incompetent? Long pause. I believed my father, even though you'd been married to Kevin for 10 years, knew his character, his capabilities. My father said it was temporary, that we'd give everything back when Kevin was better. But you didn't. No, why not? She looked at Dale, then away. I don't know. Judge Hendricks leaned forward. Mrs. Dawson, did you love your husband? Brenda's eyes filled. I thought I did. Did you believe he deserved to lose everything? No, but I didn't know how to stop it. That admission hung in the courtroom. When court adjourned for the day, Kevin sat on the courthouse steps. She could have stopped it, he said. She could have, but she didn't. Does that make it worse or better? It just makes it sad. We drove home in silence. Tyler was waiting, doing homework at the kitchen table. How'd it go? He asked. Good, Kevin said. Real good. Tomorrow would bring closing arguments. But tonight, we had dinner. We had each other. And we had truth on our side. The judge looked over her glasses at Dale and said, Sir, this is the most clear-cut case of vulnerable adult exploitation I've seen in 20 years. We were back in the courtroom. Final day. Judge Hendricks had reviewed all the evidence overnight. She didn't waste time. I've practiced law for 40 years, 22 of them on this bench. I've seen families destroy each other over money, over pride, over petty grievances, but this case represents something particularly disturbing. Dale sat rigid, his new lawyer beside him expressionless. Mr. Morrison, you deliberately waited for your son-in-law to be at his most vulnerable, grieving the loss of a child, and systematically stripped him of everything he'd worked 15 years to build. You forged documents, you transferred assets, you drained accounts, and when he started to question what happened, you painted him as mentally unstable and had him evicted from his own home. She flipped through papers. The evidence is overwhelming. Medical records confirm Mr. Kevin Dawson was not capable of informed consent during the period in question. The timeline shows calculated exploitation. The pattern evidence from your previous son-in-law demonstrates this isn't a mistake. It's a method. She looked up. I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. Mr. Morrison, you will immediately transfer all property back to Kevin Dawson. The house, the business, the vehicles, all of it. You will also pay restitution for drained business accounts, $66,000, plus lost income for the period Mr. Dawson was unable to work, which I calculate at $29,000. Total damages, $95,000. You have 30 days. Dale's face went white. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution, insurance fraud, filing false police reports, financial exploitation of a vulnerable person. The DA can decide whether charges are appropriate, but in my opinion, they are. She turned to Brenda. Mrs. Dawson, you participated in this theft. You had a legal and moral duty to protect your husband during his grief. Instead, you aided your father in destroying him. I find your actions reprehensible. While you're not named in the criminal referral, I want it noted in this record that you failed in every duty a spouse owes. Brenda was crying. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Tom shook Kevin's hand, then mine. That's as good as it gets, gentlemen. We walked out into the October sunshine. Kevin stopped on the courthouse steps, just breathing. It's over, he said. Not quite. Still got to get everything transferred. Dale's got 30 days to comply. But we won. Yeah, we won. That evening, Tom called with more news. The DA was filing charges. Insurance fraud for the discrepancy between tax filings and insurance valuations, filing a false instrument for the fake police report, financial exploitation. Dale was looking at 3 to 5 years if convicted. His insurance broker's license was already under review. He'd never work in the industry again. Brenda filed for divorce 2 months later, agreeing to supervised visits for Tyler, separated from Kevin, separated from her father, alone with the choices she'd made. The house transferred back on November 3rd. Clean title, Kevin's name. We drove over together. Kevin had the new keys in his pocket. Tyler was in the back seat, quiet, looking at the house he'd been forced to leave. "It's really ours again?" he asked. "It's really ours," Kevin said. And for the first time in a year, my son smiled like he meant it. Getting your property back is the easy part. Getting your life back takes longer. Kevin changed the locks himself. I stood there watching, handing him tools, like when he was a teenager learning to fix things. Tyler ran through the house, checking every room. His old bedroom, the bathroom, the kitchen where he'd eaten breakfast every morning. "My shelf is still here," he called from his room. "The one Dad and I built." Kevin walked through slowly, touching walls, opening closets, reclaiming space. Dale and Brenda had left the place mostly intact. The furniture was different. Some of Kevin's personal items were gone, but the bones of the house, the workshop, the yard, the structure Kevin had maintained, were still there. We spent that first weekend cleaning, top to bottom, washing away the last traces of people who'd had no right to be there. The business was harder. 3 trucks, but they needed work. Dale had neglected maintenance. One needed a full transmission rebuild. Another had bald tires and failing brakes. The Peterbilt, Kevin's pride, had a cracked windshield and a check engine light that had been ignored for months. He ran them into the ground, Kevin said. So we build them back up. I loaned him another $40,000. Investment this time, not charity. Silent partner. My name went on the reformed LLC, legal and proper. Kevin started calling old clients. Most were happy to hear from him. A few had moved on to other carriers, but several were willing to give him another chance. "I heard what happened," Jim Patterson said. "Your father-in-law screwed you over, but you're back now?" "I'm back. Good. I've got 3 loads a week if you want them. 1 client at a time, 1 route at a time." Kevin hired Ray Morrison back. They worked together getting the trucks roadworthy, rebuilding what Dale had broken. I helped where I could, made calls, used old connections in the industry, put in good words with people who remembered when Kevin was just starting out. 2 months in, Kevin was running regular routes again. Not at full capacity yet, but building. He framed the court order, hung it in his office, not out of spite, out of memory, a reminder of what happens when you let someone else control your life. Tyler adjusted faster than any of us expected. Back in his old school, back with old friends. His teacher called to say he seemed happier, more focused. One evening, I found Kevin in the workshop, just standing there, looking at his tools. "You okay?" I asked. "I built this, all of it, the business, this house, and I almost let them convince me I didn't deserve it. But you didn't, because of you, because you're strong enough to ask for help when you need it. That's not a weakness, son. That's wisdom." He nodded, picked up a wrench, started working on something. Getting property back is paperwork and keys. Getting your life back is harder. It's waking up every morning and choosing to believe you deserve what you have, choosing to trust yourself again. But watching Kevin in his workshop, tools in hand, purpose in his eyes, I knew he was getting there. We both were. The best thing I hauled in 35 years wasn't freight. It was my son back from the edge. And the longest journeys, they're always the ones that lead you back home. 6 months after the verdict, I'm sitting on the porch watching Tyler throw a baseball. Kevin's business is stable now. 10 regular clients, 2 trucks running full routes. The third's in the shop getting a new engine, but he'll have it back on the road next month. Dale got 18 months. Plea deal. He'll serve 9 with good behavior. Lost his license, lost his reputation, lost everything he stole and then some. Brenda divorced him, moved to Arizona. She calls Tyler once a month, supervised visits twice a year. Kevin granted it for Tyler's sake, not hers. The boy deserves to know his mother, even if she failed him. But Tyler's thriving. Honor roll last semester. Made the Little League team. He's got stability now. Routine. Men in his life who show up. Kevin and I have conversations we should have had years ago. About Margaret. About mistakes I made when he was growing up. Always on the road. Always chasing the next haul. I get it now, he said last week. You were providing. That's what fathers do. I could have been around more. You're around now. That's what matters. I think about what this whole experience taught me. First, keep records. Every handshake, every loan, every agreement. Paper trail saved my son's life. Second, the family reveals itself in crisis. Some people show up, others show their true nature. Both are valuable information. Third, patience beats anger every time. We could have confronted Dale that first day, gotten nowhere. Instead, we built a case. I gathered evidence. Let the system work. Fourth, recovery takes longer than theft. Dale stole Kevin's life in 6 weeks. Getting it back took a year. But it's back. That's what matters. And finally, it's never too late to fight for what's right. Kevin's 43 now. I'm 69. We're not young men, but we stood our ground. We protected family. We made sure Dale couldn't hurt anyone else. That's worth more than any verdict. Tyler's calling me to throw the ball. Kevin's in the driveway, working on the truck. Evening lights going gold across the yard. This is what we fought for. Not property, not money. This, normal life, family dinners, homework at the kitchen table, trucks that run and kids who laugh. If you've made it this far, hit that like button if this resonated with you. Subscribe if you want to hear more real stories like this, from men who've been around the block and lived to tell about it. Drop a comment. Tell me your story. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if you've ever had to fight for family. I read every single one, and your stories matter. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone fighting their own battle, someone who needs to know that standing your ground is worth it. The road taught me a lot in 35 years, but the most important lesson came after I hung up the keys. Sometimes, the longest haul is the one that brings you home. And sometimes, home isn't a place. It's the people you refuse to leave behind.